السلام عليكم. في البداية أحب أشكركم جميعا على الحضور، وأشكر منظمين المؤتمر مشكورين على المؤتمر الرائع حقيقة، من أفضل المؤتمرات اللي حضرتها في المملكة تتعلق بعالم المعلومات. قد يكون من يعني أهم أو الثيم حق الكونفرنس إنه السكيورتي كإنيبلر لرؤية السعودية 2030. فلذلك لعله يكون هذا التوك فعلا shedding some light إنه السكيورتي بقدر أهميته فهو يظل ممكن للبزنس وليس جول بحد ذاته. ممكن للمنظمات، ممكن للبلدان، ممكن للاقتصاد بشكل. طيب إن شاء الله مايكروفون أحسن. يمكن هذول RSA was mad at me using their tagline because they are trying to sell with business-driven security. If I told them you guys should pay me because I'm advertising for your approach. This is not to say RSA is using business-driven security. It's just to say a conversation that I had with RSA. Today's security is really having, it's not working, obviously. 70% of compromised organizations in 2016 had a hindrance in their business. 93% of compromise attempts globally happens within minutes. Detection, 83 of those takes weeks. And 90% of organization leaders, chief information security officers, are rethinking their security strategy for the next 12 to 18 months. This clearly signifies the issue that we're having, and the issue that today's security is still lacking to keep up with the threat landscape that we have. Also, security is evolving from the emergence right now to state-sponsored attacks. We can see states coming up stating they have cyber army. There's a competition on the biggest and the most effective cyber army. The landscape of the threats that we face, from script kiddies, late 90s, to financial motivated attackers, to state-sponsored attackers that we started seeing from the Stuxnet, and it's growing and evolving, and any geopolitical conflicts add to that tension that we have. Also, it is affecting global economies. Latest study shows that cyber attacks damages global GDP by about 0.5%. So we're losing 0.5% of the global GDP because of cyber attacks. The number is not getting any better. It is expected by many of the experts that the number is going to rise to 2.7% of global GDP that we're going to have as an impact of cyber threats and cyber attacks that we face as nations, as organizations, and the world as a whole. And we can see it's also costing a lot of money. It is not cheap. Achieving cybersecurity, national budget for cybersecurity is about 0.1% of GDPs on average. And for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, to reach the average spending level, we need to spend about 3.7 billion Saudi riyals just to reach the average, of organizations and average of countries that have been spending such amount of money on an increasing pace. So it's not really cheap. So with all that being said, the question always arises: why do we consider cybersecurity as a simple technical problem? That it's just we're trying to defend against the latest threat, defend against the latest malware, defend against the latest APT, and continuing firefighting this with, in many organizations, some isolation away from business. The question always gets asked: what is cybersecurity? If you talk to people in the field doing operation, cybersecurity means in the minds of many people, this gigantic list of products and tools and companies and things that are coming and going all the time. And we spend lots and lots and lots of money of getting the latest quote-unquote toy. Because we want to defend against the latest threat, but it's also, this is our job, we want to do it, we're always encouraged. In fact, what cybersecurity should look is something similar to this. We have a business strategy, we have a government strategy, we have an organizational strategy. And from that strategy, it informs an IT strategy, a cybersecurity strategy, and from that, we have an architecture, we have a business process, and we have our systems to run these business processes, and these systems are threatened by risks, by vulnerabilities, by exploits. With that kind of language, now we basically don't operate in an isolation. We tie everything that we do in cybersecurity to what everyone else in the organization does. If we go back to the 1990s, there has been many discussions. Is technology a business enabler or not? Books has been authored. There is a very famous book called The Productivity Paradox. So the whole thesis of this book, that it's a discussion. Is technology an enabler for business, or is it a cost center? I think that rings a bell to almost everyone here. Is security, cybersecurity, an enabler for business, or is it a cost center? So we had this discussion a while ago, and a lot of people sat down, thought, discussed, designed framework tied to business. Business IT alignment became a topic, became a profession, and a lot of people invested in that. Until now, there isn't a single organization that says IT is not a business enabler. So I think there has been a lot of lessons that we can learn from the previous era of the perception of IT in organizations. So I'm going to talk about three main topics in what I consider partially what is meant by business or organizational driven security. The first thing, we have to always think not attacks first, we have to think that business first. When we get an attack, the first question that should come to our mind, if we had the previous slide maybe on some wall within the cybersecurity department, which basically going to surprise the CEO or the head of an organization, we would know exactly when this attack happened, it's going to hinder this process. So when someone talks to the upper management, hey, we have this problem, they don't tell him, yeah, talk to me tomorrow morning. No, you're going to tell him that this business process is going to be disrupted. What is going to happen is this pipeline is going to be affected. So with that, we really tie everything that we do to a business that exists. We tie what we do here in Saudi Arabia, in the kingdom, to something that relates to the Saudi vision. There is elements that will not be realized in the Saudi vision if we don't have a correct cybersecurity. So we should start talking that language. We should start speaking and tying and everything that we talk about that relates somehow to business. Going back to take an example, when an incident happened, that basically I can directly relate that incident that's going to impact a business process. When a business process is hindered, that it's basically going to hinder the achievement of the organizational strategy. So the same example, if something happens to one of the organizations in the country, it is great to talk about the attack. But it's also very important to say, hey, if Ministry of Labor get affected, basically we're not going to be able to process visas. And if we don't process visas, we're not going to be able to get people to work at organizations. And if we do a simple math, we can show that can cost us every minute a couple of millions, if not hundreds of millions of Saudi riyals. Because we mapped that. We mapped that at a national level. We map that at an organizational level, and everyone can communicate with that kind of language. We need to view security as a whole ecosystem. It's not just a simple process or a simple technology. There is culture surrounding it. There is strategy up encompassing everything. We're not working on isolation. I know I'm kind of like, putting things in theory right now. I know everyone is firefighting the challenges that we face, but I think some of us need to take a step and think, how does this really relate to what the other parts of the business is doing? Let me just give you one example. If we look at a technical driven security advice, basically, and this is what we have, I would say 90% of organization, choose a password with uppercase, lowercase letters, symbols, and all that kind of stuff, because we look at it from a technology perspective. But if we start talking, okay, how we can make people's life easier first, and then more secure second. Because if we make it more secure and it's not easier, they're not going to use it. People are smart. And they are smarter than our systems and smarter than so many of the controls that we have. So if we don't make their life easier, then more secure, and it's not a simple task. It's one of the most difficult tasks that faced all the security industry in the world. So, for example, if we start looking, and there has been ground research, as Ian spoke at the opening keynote, that passphrases are, many researchers say that it is even more effective than a random password. And there has been simple math. This short comic can give you a sarcastic illustration of this. But if we keep talking the first component, we basically, the business is going to say, hey, just don't talk to those geeks. They just want to make our lives harder. And, I'm not going to be able to remember, as Ian said, 600 digits every month. Give me something reasonable to work with. And I think if we work hard and we look at what latest technologies and latest people in their fields did, we can find some answers to some of these difficult questions. The second thing that I want to talk about is data. In the age of cybersecurity, we have lots and lots of data. 90% of the data of the whole world has been generated in the past 2 years alone. So we have a wealth of data that is unprecedented in the human history. And we need to do a lot with that data. So if we can't measure something with all the data that we have, how are we going to be able to talk to business people that it's more effective? It's getting their ROIs, it's getting their return of investments. I know this is an overloaded term, but we need to be able to think, how can we measure the things that we do? This is just one example. I'm not advocating for that example. It's just an illustration of some of the things that we want to do at completely different layers. We want to measure how the culture of cybersecurity in organizations are changing. We want to measure how the organizational structure is changing to reflect cybersecurity. We talk about those topics all the time. We talk about security is reporting to IT, and that's a problem. Then, okay, show me a way to measure why is security reporting to IT is, for example, just an ignorant approach to cybersecurity. Being able to measure that and provide ground recommendation would change the complete landscape and language that we use. The third component is we need to be risk-driven. Again, that's a completely overloaded term, but just to give an example, in the latest IDC report about cybersecurity landscape in Saudi Arabia, they said it's going to be in 2017, it's the #1 issue and challenge CIOs face. And the amount of money that we spent, it's estimated to be about 1 million Saudi riyals. And approaching cybersecurity with all the surveys they did and talking to CIOs, it is going to change because they are seeing they pouring more money at it and it's getting worse. It's not getting any better. And it's all about changing mentality. So if we start thinking, okay, I am going to be always attacked. So let me stop the nonsense of trying to draw that perimeter. If I draw the perimeter on the network, someone is going to bring his own device. If no one in my employee brings his own device, a third-party contractor is going to bring his own device. And the list goes on and on and on. So let me say, okay, I am going to be attacked. Let's try to minimize. How can I minimize that kind of attack? The second as the previous talk alluded to, is signature-based. It's not going to help anymore. We are seeing about 1,000,000 different malware every 5 minutes in the world. So no matter how fast my internet connection speed, I'm not going to be able to update million signature every 5 minutes. And even if I can't do so, for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to have another million signature, and the list goes on and on and on and on. So I need to move into really looking at the behavior, and there are some emerging technologies that are really helping in that. But I think with that, you really need the human element. You need the people who can build that wealth of experience and knowledge. So another example about the mentality of saying, I'm going to be attacked, to the mentality, no, let me minimize that risk. I don't want to be attacked, or let me minimize that risk. And the same example, Ian, I think, talked about it before. And by the way, how those examples before Ian's talk, so no one says that I stole his phrases from him. Changing a password every 30, 60, 90 days is really unreasonable. And I think if we start focusing on what we do better, instead of buying all these controls to an IAM and trying to force people to change password, let me think on being able to detect what a weak password is, and being able to do more active work on threat intelligence. And if there's a password database dumped somewhere that belongs to me, I can alert my users to change their password. But I'm asking them, if someone chooses a really good password and no one knows about it, after 90 days I tell him, hey, come on, change your password, I think I'm not giving him a good advice. And I think these are the three main pillars that I just wanted to shed some lights on. And I want to leave you with one final thought. In cognitive psychology in 2000, a Nobel Prize winner, two guys, Dunning and Kruger, talked about the challenge of competency. And what we see, it's very clear when you're not that competent, you tend to overestimate your skills. And the more competent you are, you tend to underestimate your skills. So I think when we have a lot of those vendors really overestimate what they're doing, and we have those experts underestimating what they're doing, we really face some of the challenging, that part of human nature. Thank you so much, and my time is up.